My name is Charleston, and at 65 I thought visiting my son Marcus in Denver would be a simple father-son reunion after 3 years apart. When he suggested we grab drinks at his favorite local pub, the Copper Shield, I never imagined the bartender would grip my wrist with trembling hands and whisper those terrifying words that changed everything. What happened next forced me to climb out of a bathroom window and follow my own son through dark streets, uncovering a nightmare I never saw coming. The mountain air hit different in Denver compared to my small town in Ohio. Standing outside the arrival gate at Denver International Airport, I spotted Marcus immediately. 3 years had transformed him from the struggling college graduate I remembered into someone who radiated success. His charcoal gray suit looked expensive, the kind I'd only seen in high-end department stores, and when he pulled me into a hug, I caught the scent of cologne that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Dad, you look great," Marcus said, grabbing my single suitcase with ease. "I'm so glad you finally agreed to visit." The truth was, I'd resisted his invitations for months. After Martha passed 2 years ago, I'd become something of a hermit, content with my crossword puzzles and evening news. But Marcus had been persistent, even purchasing my plane ticket without asking, claiming his tech startup had hit some major milestone worth celebrating. His car waited in the premium parking area, a pristine white Tesla that hummed to life, silently. I'd never been in an electric vehicle before, and Marcus chuckled at my expression when the Falcon Wing doors opened upward like some spaceship. "Wait until you see the self-driving feature," he said, programming an address into the massive touchscreen. Though I prefer to drive myself, old habits from learning on your ancient pickup truck. The ride to his place gave me time to study my son properly. At 32, Marcus had developed the kind of confidence that comes from success. He talked animatedly about server architectures and payment processing systems, using terms that flew over my head despite my background in forensic accounting. His company, Next Gen Payment Solutions, supposedly handled international transactions for emerging markets. "We're processing nearly 10 million a month now," Marcus said, navigating through downtown traffic. "My investors are thrilled. We might even expand to Europe next quarter." His loft apartment occupied the entire top floor of a converted warehouse in the Rhino district. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains, and the furniture looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. This wasn't the cramped studio apartment I'd helped him move into after college. "Marcus, this place must cost a fortune," I said, setting my suitcase in the guest room that was bigger than my master bedroom back home. "The company covers it," he replied casually. "Part of my executive package. Hey, I want you to meet someone special tonight. Made reservations at Guard and Grace for 7. Over dinner at the upscale steakhouse, I met Sarah Morrison. She was stunning in an understated way, with dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to study everything. Marcus introduced her as a pharmaceutical researcher at Apex Laboratories, working on cutting-edge cancer treatments. "Your son talks about you constantly, Charleston," Sarah said, her slight accent adding charm to her words. "He mentioned you worked in forensic accounting." "Retired now," I replied, cutting into a steak that cost more than I usually spent on a week's groceries. "Spent 35 years tracking down financial criminals for the state. Nothing as exciting as Marcus's work, though." Throughout dinner, I noticed peculiar details. Marcus kept 2 phones on the table, both constantly lighting up with messages. When I asked about it, he laughed it off as separating work and personal communications. Sarah touched his arm frequently, but something in her gestures seemed calculated rather than affectionate. Maybe I was just being an overprotective father. "Dad, you have to see my favorite local spot," Marcus said as we finished dessert. "The Copper Shield has the best whiskey selection in Denver. Plus, everyone there knows me." The pub sat on a corner in the trendy Highlands neighborhood, its brass fixtures and dark wood interior creating an atmosphere of established sophistication. Unlike the dive bars I frequented in Ohio, the Copper Shield catered to young professionals. Groups clustered around high-top tables discussing deals and ventures over craft cocktails. Marcus, my man. The bartender, an attractive woman in her 30s with auburn hair, greeted us warmly. "Your usual table is ready." "Thanks, Grace. This is my father, Charleston. Dad, Grace, makes the best old-fashioned in the city." Grace extended her hand, and her grip was firm, professional. But something flickered in her green eyes when she looked at me, gone too quickly to interpret. We settled into a corner booth where Marcus could see the entire room. I noticed he positioned himself strategically back to the wall eye line, to both exits. When had my son developed such habits? "So what do you think of Denver?" Marcus asked, signaling Grace for drinks. "It's impressive," I admitted. "You've built quite a life here. Your mother would have been proud." A shadow crossed his face at the mention of Martha. "I wish she could have seen it. Everything I've built, it's partly for her memory, you know, to prove her faith in me wasn't misplaced." Grace appeared with our drinks, setting them down carefully. As Marcus reached for his phone, which was buzzing insistently, she lingered by our table. "Important call," Marcus muttered, glancing at the screen. His expression shifted, becoming harder, more focused. "I need to take this. Be right back, Dad." He stood abruptly, already bringing the phone to his ear. "Yes, I understand. The shipment arriving Thursday. Know that timeline works." His voice faded as he pushed through the crowd toward the exit, leaving me alone with my whiskey. The pub's warmth suddenly felt oppressive. I was about to take a sip when I felt fingers wrap around my wrist with surprising strength. Grace leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear, her entire demeanor transformed from friendly bartender to something far more urgent. Her next words made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. "Your son isn't who you think he is. He's in terrible danger. They're watching him right now. Don't react. When he comes back, act normal. Go to the bathroom in 5 minutes. I'll explain everything." Grace released my wrist as quickly as she'd grabbed it, morphing back into the cheerful bartender persona, just as Marcus reappeared through the crowd. My heart hammered against my ribs, but decades of investigating financial crimes had taught me to keep my expression neutral during shocking revelations. "Sorry about that," Marcus said, sliding back into the booth. "International clients don't respect time zones. Where were we?" I forced myself to lift the whiskey glass steadily. "You were telling me about your expansion plans." Marcus launched into an enthusiastic explanation of server farms and cryptocurrency integration, while I nodded along, my mind racing. Who was this woman? What danger was Marcus in every patron in the bar suddenly seemed suspicious. The man at the corner table reading his phone, was he watching us? The couple laughing near the window, were their glances lingering too long in our direction? "Dad, you're awfully quiet," Marcus observed. "Jet lag hitting you?" "A bit," I managed. "Actually, I think I need to use the restroom. All that coffee on the plane." Marcus pointed toward the back. "Down that hallway, can't miss it." Standing on legs that wanted to shake, I wove through the crowd. The hallway was dimmer decorated with vintage brewery posters. I pushed into the men's room, finding it mercifully empty. The window above the sinks was small but potentially manageable. Before I could second-guess myself, an envelope slid under the door. With trembling fingers, I tore it open. The note inside was brief, written in precise handwriting. "They have cameras everywhere. Climb out the window. Blue sedan outside. I'm Grace Walsh, DEA. Your son is unknowingly laundering money for the Valdez cartel. If they discover he knows, they'll kill him. Trust no one at this bar." DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration. The words cartel and laundering created a sick feeling in my stomach. My son, my brilliant boy, who'd built something from nothing, tangled up with drug cartels. I studied the window again. It would be a tight squeeze for a man my age, but I'd kept myself relatively fit. The alternative was walking back out there, pretending everything was normal, while cartel members potentially watched our every move. Hoisting myself up onto the sink counter, I pushed the window open. Cool night air flooded in, along with the sounds of traffic. The alley below was narrow, dark, lined with dumpsters. I went feet first, grateful for the countless hours I'd spent reviewing crime scenes that taught me how to minimize injury during unconventional exits. My khakis tore on the window frame, and I scraped both forearms badly on the brick exterior, but I managed to drop into the alley without breaking anything. A blue Honda Civic idled at the alley mouth hazard lights, blinking. Limping slightly, I approached the passenger side. Grace sat behind the wheel, her bartender outfit replaced with a tactical vest marked DEA. The interior was crammed with electronic equipment monitors and communication devices. "Get in," she said urgently. "We don't have much time before someone notices you're gone." I climbed in my mind, struggling to process the transformation. "You're really deep." 3-year undercover operation. Grace confirmed, pulling into traffic. "Your son stumbled into the middle of one of the biggest money laundering operations we've ever seen. Charleston, I need you to look at these and tell me if you recognize anyone." She handed me a tablet displaying surveillance photos. My stomach dropped as I recognized faces from dinner from the bar, even from Marcus's apartment building. But it was the final photo that made me gasp. Sarah Morrison at what appeared to be a family gathering, surrounded by hard-looking men with facial tattoos, gold chains, and automatic weapons. Sarah Morrison is actually Isabella Valdez. Grace explained, turning onto a quieter street. Daughter of Roberto Valdez, head of one of Juarez's most violent cartels. She was planted to seduce your son, keep tabs on him. Their entire relationship is a lie designed to control him. "How long?" My voice came out strangled. 2 years. They identified Marcus's company as perfect for their needs. International transactions, cryptocurrency capabilities, brilliant CEO who believes in the best of people. They've been slowly integrating their operations using shell companies as investors. Grace pulled into an underground parking garage, stopping near a van marked with utility company logos. Inside, 2 other agents monitored banks of screens showing various locations around Denver. "Charleston, I know this is overwhelming." Grace continued, her tone softening slightly. "But we need your help. Your forensic accounting background, your relationship with Marcus, they're assets we desperately need. The cartel is planning something big, and your son is right in the middle of it." I stared at the monitors, showing my son's apartment building, the Copper Shield, various warehouses around the city. "What kind of something?" "Next week they're moving $50 million through Marcus's systems. It's their biggest operation yet. But here's what Marcus doesn't know. Once the transfer completes, they plan to tip off the FBI themselves, frame him for the entire operation. He'll take the fall while they disappear." "Well, why would they burn their own operation?" Grace pulled up financial documents on one of the screens. Even at a glance, my trained eye could see the sophisticated layering of transactions designed to obscure the money's origin. "Your son is getting too successful asking too many questions. Last month he wanted to audit some of the shell companies. Isabella convinced him to wait, but the cartel sees him as a liability now. Easier to let him take the fall, serve life in federal prison while they set up shop elsewhere." Life in prison. The words tasted like ash. The way they've structured it with the evidence they've planted, Marcus would be looking at minimum 25 years, more likely life. And Charleston... Grace hesitated, then continued grimly. "Prison isn't safe for people who know cartel secrets. They have people inside. Marcus wouldn't last 6 months. Rage built in my chest, the kind I hadn't felt since discovering the pension fund manager who'd stolen my fellow workers' retirement savings 15 years ago. But this was my son, my blood. "What do you need me to do?" Grace studied me carefully. "Are you sure once you're in, there's no backing out? These people don't hesitate to kill entire families. "That's my boy out there," I said firmly. "Tell me the plan." Over the next hour, Grace laid out the situation in devastating detail. The Valdez cartel had been using Marcus's company for 2 years, moving over $200 million. Every transaction was designed to point back to Marcus, while keeping the real criminals untouchable. They'd even created fake communications implicating him in drug trafficking discussions he'd never had. This is what we know about next week's transfer. Grace showed me a timeline. Thursday night, there's a celebration for NextGen's latest round of funding, all cartel money, of course. During the party, they'll initiate the $50 million transfer. Isabella will ensure Marcus inputs the codes personally, making him the only one with direct fingerprints on the crime. "Can't you just arrest them now?" "Without concrete evidence of the cartel's involvement, Marcus goes down alone. We need to document the entire network, prove he's an unwitting victim. That's where you come in." Grace explained her plan. I would return to the bar, pretend nothing had happened, continue playing the proud father visiting his successful son. Meanwhile, I'd gather evidence, use my forensic skills to trace the real money trail, and help the DEA build an airtight case. "One more thing," Grace said quietly. "There's something else you need to know. 2 years ago, Marcus had a business partner named Jason Chen. Smart kid spotted some irregularities in the books. He tried to warn Marcus, but before he could explain fully, he died in a car accident. Single vehicle ran off a mountain road." "You're saying the cartel killed him, made it look accidental? We found evidence on his laptop, hidden files showing he'd discovered the money laundering. He was trying to protect Marcus when they murdered him." The weight of it all threatened to crush me. My son living alongside his best friend's killers, sharing a bed with the daughter of the man who ordered the hit. How had I missed the signs during our phone calls? How had Martha and I raised a son so trusting that he couldn't see the wolves circling him? "I need to get back," I said, checking my watch. "Marcus will be wondering." Grace handed me a phone, explaining it contained encrypted communication apps and surveillance software. "Document everything. Financial records, conversations, meetings. We'll be monitoring, but we need evidence that will hold up in court. And Charleston, be careful. If they suspect, you know." "They'll kill us both," I finished. "They'll kill everyone you've ever loved," Grace corrected. "The Valdez cartel doesn't do loose ends." I climbed back through the bathroom window with Grace's help from inside, tearing my shirt more to explain the delay. Splashing water on my face, I stared at my reflection. The man looking back had aged years in the past hour, but beneath the shock and fear, something else stirred. The old instincts from decades of hunting financial predators. They'd made one mistake, they'd underestimated the old man. Walking back to the booth, I found Marcus paying the tab, looking concerned. "Dad, you okay? You were gone a while." "Fine," I said, letting embarrassment color my voice. "That window was painted shut, took forever to get it open for some air. Not as young as I used to be." Marcus relaxed, chuckling. "Come on, let's get you back. You look exhausted." As we left the copper shield, I caught Grace's eye. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, then turned to serve another customer. Outside, I noticed things I'd missed before. The sedan parked across the street with tinted windows. The man smoking near the corner who turned to watch us pass. My son was living in a cage, and he didn't even know it. But I did now. And I'd spent a career dismantling cages built by criminals who thought themselves untouchable. The Valdez cartel had no idea what they'd awakened when they decided to use my son. They thought they'd found the perfect mark in Marcus Walsh. Instead, they'd summoned Charleston Walsh out of retirement. And I didn't come to Denver to lose. Sleep eluded me that first night in Marcus's guest room. Every sound made me tense, wondering if the cartel had somehow discovered my meeting with Grace. The encrypted phone she'd given me lay hidden in my shaving kit, its weight both comforting and terrifying. By dawn, I'd developed the beginnings of a plan. "You're up early," Marcus said, finding me on his balcony watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. "Coffee's brewing." "Old habits," I replied. Your mother always said I'd wake the roosters back home. Over breakfast, I carefully probed for information. So this expansion you mentioned, how exactly does the international payment system work? Marcus's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved their work. He pulled out his laptop, showing me flowcharts and diagrams that mapped money movement across borders. See, traditional banking systems are slow, expensive, he explained. We use blockchain technology combined with partnerships in emerging markets. A business in Colombia can pay a supplier in Thailand instantly minimal fees. Colombia. My forensic instincts noted the country's significance in drug trafficking, but Marcus seemed oblivious to the implications. Your investors must be sophisticated to understand all this, I said casually. Oh, they're brilliant. Mr. Restrepo especially, he has connections throughout South America. Says we're solving real problems for legitimate businesses, struggling with traditional banking limitations. I memorized every name he mentioned, watched him demonstrate the system's back-end. My trained eye caught what Marcus missed: transaction patterns designed to obscure origin points, layered transfers that would make tracing funds nearly impossible for average investigators. I'm proud of you, son, I said, meaning it despite everything. You've built something remarkable here. Thanks, Dad. Hey, want to come to the office today? I can show you around, introduce you to the team. An hour later, we arrived at a gleaming office building in downtown Denver. Next-gen Payment Solutions occupied the entire 14th floor, its modern workspace buzzing with young employees, typing code and analyzing markets. Marcus introduced me proudly, and I shook hands with dozens of bright minds who had no idea they were working for drug cartels. This is our main operations center, Marcus said, leading me through a secured door into a room filled with monitors displaying real-time transaction data. We process about 10,000 transfers daily. I studied the screens, my forensic training automatically cataloging anomalies. Certain transactions followed patterns I recognized from money laundering cases, amounts just below reporting thresholds, rapid movement between shell entities, endpoints in countries with bank secrecy laws. Mr. Walsh, what a pleasure! I turned to find a distinguished man in his 50s, silver-haired with an expensive suit and predatory smile. Marcus introduced him as Eduardo Restrepo, one of their primary investors. Marcus speaks highly of your financial expertise. Restrepo said, his handshake lingering uncomfortably long. Perhaps you could review our books sometime, ensure we're maximizing efficiency. I'm retired, I said mildly. These days I stick to balancing my checkbook. Restrepo laughed, but his eyes remained cold, evaluating. Modest. I like that. You must join us for dinner tonight. My treat. After he left, I excused myself to the restroom and quickly texted Grace on the encrypted phone. Restrepo here. Definitely cartel. Pushing to see books. Her response came quickly. Careful. He's Roberto Valdez's right hand. Very dangerous. The rest of the office tour passed in a blur. I met Marcus's legitimate employees, saw the conference rooms where cartel money was laundered, alongside real business transactions, witnessed my son's pride in something built on blood money he didn't even know about. That evening, Restrepo's dinner invitation turned into an elaborate affair at an exclusive steakhouse. Isabella joined us, playing the devoted girlfriend, perfectly asking about my life in Ohio, sharing fabricated stories about her pharmaceutical research. Restrepo held court, telling tales of business ventures across Latin America, each story containing veiled references to the cartel's true operations that flew over Marcus's head, but rang alarm bells in mine. Your son has a gift, Restrepo told me over cognac. Vision combined with technical brilliance. We're lucky to have found him. I think Marcus is the lucky one, I replied carefully. Having investors who believe in his vision. Oh, we more than believe, Restrepo said, his smile sharpening. We're fully committed to next-gen success, all of us, forever. The threat in those words was subtle but unmistakable. They owned Marcus now, and they were letting me know it. After dinner, I claimed exhaustion and had Marcus drop me back at his apartment. But once he left for a late meeting with Isabella, I activated the surveillance app Grace had installed on my phone. It connected to DEA resources, showing GPS tracking on various cartel members throughout Denver. Restrepo's car was heading to a warehouse in the industrial district. 3 other vehicles were converging on the same location. According to Grace's intelligence, this was where they conducted real business away from the legitimate front of NextGen. I couldn't resist. Calling an Uber, I had the driver drop me several blocks from the warehouse, then approached on foot. The encrypted phone had night vision capabilities, and I used it to photograph license plates, document the guards posted at entrances. Finding a stack of pallets that offered concealment and elevation, I climbed carefully my 65-year-old joints, protesting. From my vantage point, I could see through grimy windows into the warehouse interior. What I saw there made my blood run cold. Tables covered in cash-counting machines, men with automatic weapons standing guard, and in the center Restrepo conducting what was clearly a high-level cartel meeting. I recognized several faces from Marcus's investor meetings, their legitimate businessman facades replaced with the hard expressions of career criminals. I started recording with my phone, zooming in on the cash, the weapons, the drugs packaged for distribution. This was the evidence Grace needed proof that the money flowing through NextGen came from drug trafficking. Then I saw something that changed everything. Restrepo pulled up a presentation on a large screen showing NextGen's transaction system. But overlaid were routes I recognized: drug trafficking corridors from South America through Mexico into the United States. They weren't just using Marcus's company to launder money. They were using it to coordinate their entire distribution network. My phone vibrated with an incoming text from Grace. "Where are you, Marcus? Looking for you." I'd been gone too long, lost track of time gathering evidence. Climbing down from my perch, I called another Uber, my mind racing with the implications of what I'd discovered. This wasn't just about money laundering. Marcus's company had become the technological backbone of a major drug trafficking operation. Back at the apartment, I found Marcus pacing the living room phone in hand. "Dad, where were you? I came home and you were gone. I was about to call the police." "I'm sorry," I said, thinking quickly. "Couldn't sleep, jet lag. Went for a walk and got turned around. This city is bigger than I'm used to." Marcus relaxed slightly, but still looked concerned. "You can't just wander around Denver at night, Dad. It's not like small-town Ohio." "I realize that now," I said, adding a note of embarrassment to sell the story. "Got a bit scared, actually. Finally flagged down a taxi." "Why didn't you call me?" "Didn't want to interrupt your meeting. I'm fine, just feeling foolish." Marcus hugged me, and I felt the weight of my deception. But heavier still was the knowledge that every moment we delayed gave the cartel more time to destroy my son's life. Later, lying in the guest bed, I uploaded all the evidence to Grace through a secure server. Her response was immediate. "This changes everything. Strike team mobilizing. Need you to maintain cover 3 more days until we're ready." 3 days. 72 hours of pretending I didn't know my son's girlfriend was planning his destruction, that his mentors were drug lords, that his best friend had been murdered for discovering the truth. I thought about Jason Chen trying to warn Marcus before they killed him. Had he felt this same desperate urgency? Had he known death was coming but pushed forward anyway, trying to save his friend? The next morning I woke with renewed determination. Jason Chen had died trying to protect Marcus. I wouldn't let his sacrifice be in vain. The cartel thought they held all the cards, but they'd made one crucial error. They'd brought a forensic accountant into their web of lies, and I'd spent 35 years untangling webs just like this one. Over breakfast, I studied my son's face, seeing Martha's kindness in his eyes, her trust in the goodness of others. That trust was about to be shattered, but better shattered than dead. Better betrayed than buried. "What's the plan for today?" I asked, spreading jam on my toast with steady hands. "Thought we'd take a drive up to the mountains," Marcus said. "Show you the real Colorado. Maybe have lunch in Aspen." Sounds perfect. I lied, knowing that by the time we reached those mountains, I'd have gathered enough evidence to bring down an entire cartel. The silent wolf was hunting now, and the prey had no idea death was already stalking through their den. They'd threatened my son, murdered his friend, built an empire on suffering. But empires built on lies always fall. And I was about to prove that Charleston Walsh hadn't forgotten how to topple kingdoms made of sand and blood. The mountain drive with Marcus should have been peaceful. Snow-capped peaks pierced crystal blue skies, while aspens shimmered gold in the morning light. But I couldn't appreciate the beauty not when every mile took us past locations I'd photographed the night before distribution points in the cartel's network. "You're quiet today," Marcus observed, navigating the winding road with easy confidence. "Just taking it all in," I said. "Different from Ohio's flat fields. Wait until you see the view from Loveland Pass. Mom would have loved it up here." The mention of Martha hit harder than expected. She'd always believed in Marcus, unconditionally defended him, when his high school teachers called him too trusting, too eager to see good in everyone. Now that trust was being weaponized against him. My encrypted phone buzzed. Grace Isabella planning something. Increased chatter about securing the father. Watch yourself. So they were considering using me as leverage. I'd expected this possibility but hoped to avoid it. Time to accelerate my plans. "Son, would you mind if I helped out at your office for a few days?" I asked casually. "I'm getting restless just being a tourist. Maybe I could review some financial processes, make sure you're maximizing tax advantages." Marcus lit up. "Really, that would be amazing. Your expertise could save us millions in the long run." If only he knew how literal that statement was. "Besides," I added, "it would be nice to feel useful again. Retirement isn't all it's cracked up to be." That afternoon, Marcus set me up in a small office at NextGen with access to their financial systems. The legitimacy of my presence, invited by the CEO himself, gave me cover to dig deep into transaction histories. What I found over the next 8 hours confirmed my worst fears. The cartel hadn't just infiltrated NextGen. They'd designed it from the beginning. The original angel investor who'd approached Marcus at a tech conference 3 years ago, Shell Company, linked to Roberto Valdez. Every major partnership, every expansion, every success Marcus celebrated had been orchestrated to create the perfect money laundering machine. But it was the metadata that revealed the most damning evidence. Hidden in the code were backdoors ways for the cartel to move money without Marcus's knowledge. They'd been skimming from legitimate transactions using NextGen's clean reputation to wash increasingly dirty money. I documented everything, creating parallel records that showed the real flow of funds. My forensic training proved invaluable, following money trails through dozens of shell companies across multiple countries. By evening, I had enough evidence to prosecute 43 individuals for money laundering, drug trafficking, and racketeering. "How's it going?" Marcus asked, popping into my temporary office around 7 p.m. "Fascinating stuff," I said truthfully. "You've built quite a sophisticated operation. Find any ways to save money?" "Several," I said, "but I'll need a few more days to compile a comprehensive report." Marcus beamed. "Take all the time you need. Isabella's making dinner tonight, wants to cook for us at her place. You up for it?" Every instinct screamed danger, but refusing would raise suspicions. "Sounds wonderful." Isabella's apartment was in an upscale building with extensive security. Too much security for a pharmaceutical researcher's salary, though Marcus didn't seem to notice. She greeted us warmly, playing hostess, while my trained eye cataloged escape routes and potential weapons. "I hope you like traditional Mexican cuisine," she said, leading us to an elegantly set table. "My grandmother's recipes." The food was excellent, though I barely tasted it. Isabella kept the conversation light, asking about my work history, my interests, probing for weaknesses, while maintaining her caring girlfriend facade. I played my part, the lonely widower, grateful for his son's success and happiness. After dinner, while Marcus took a call in another room, Isabella's mask slipped slightly. "You must be very proud of Marcus," she said, refilling my wine glass. "Building such success from nothing." "Every parent wants their child to succeed," I replied carefully. "Of course, and you'd do anything to protect that success, wouldn't you? To protect him." There it was. The probe to see if I could be compromised used as insurance to keep Marcus compliant. I let my eyes water slightly, thinking of Martha to summon genuine emotion. "I've already lost my wife," I said quietly. "Marcus is all I have left." Isabella's smile turned predatory, thinking she'd found the leverage point. "Then we understand each other. Family is everything. We protect our own no matter what." Marcus returned, oblivious to the subtext. The rest of the evening passed with forced normalcy, but I caught Isabella texting someone, her expression satisfied. They thought they had me figured out, the vulnerable old man who could be controlled through threats to his son. Back at Marcus's apartment, I waited until he was asleep before accessing the encrypted phone. Grace had sent multiple messages, increasingly urgent. "Meeting tomorrow night. Restrepo Isabella and Roberto Valdez himself flying in. They're accelerating timeline. Thursday celebration moved to tomorrow. Be ready." I stared at the screen, calculating rapidly. Less than 24 hours to position everything. But the compressed timeline might work in our favor. They were rushing, which meant mistakes. I spent the rest of the night preparing. Using NextGen's own systems against them, I created a mirror network that would track every transaction in real time, documenting the entire money flow. I embedded trackers in the financial software that would activate during the transfer, following money to its ultimate destinations. Most importantly, I prepared a dead man's switch. If something happened to Marcus or me, all evidence would automatically upload to the FBI, DEA, IRS, and major news outlets. The cartel would burn, even if we didn't survive to see it. Dawn found me on the balcony again, watching the city wake up. Somewhere in those streets, Roberto Valdez was arriving, the man who'd ordered Jason Chen's death, who'd corrupted my son's dreams, who thought he could play God with people's lives. "Couldn't sleep again?" Marcus asked, joining me with coffee. "Excited about tonight?" I said. "You mentioned a celebration. Biggest night in NextGen history. We're announcing our European expansion secured $50 million in additional funding. All the investors will be there." All the killers he meant, though he didn't know it. "I'm proud of you, son," I said, meaning every word. "Whatever happens, remember that. Your mother and I are both proud of the man you've become." Marcus looked puzzled by the intensity. "Dad, you okay? You're talking like this is goodbye or something." "Just emotional being here," I covered. "Seeing your success, wishing your mother could see it too." He hugged me, and I held on longer than normal, memorizing the moment. By tomorrow, his world would be shattered, but he'd be alive to rebuild it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of final preparations. I confirmed all evidence packages were ready for simultaneous deployment. Grace confirmed tactical teams were in position. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit was standing by. That evening, I dressed carefully for the celebration. Inside my jacket pocket, the encrypted phone recorded everything. Hidden cameras Grace's team had planted would capture multiple angles. Every word spoken tonight would become evidence. "Ready?" Marcus asked, adjusting his bow tie. "You look sharp, Dad." "Ready?" I confirmed, though ready for what he couldn't imagine. The venue was the Highlands Country Club, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers. 200 guests mingled with champagne, celebrating a company built on blood money. I recognized cartel members from my surveillance, now dressed in designer suits, playing at respectability. Mr. Walsh, Restrepo, approached with arms spread wide. "Tonight we make history." Behind him stood a shorter man with dead eyes and acne scars. Even without introduction, I knew this was Roberto Valdez, the devil himself come to watch his plan unfold. "My father wanted to meet the man who raised such a brilliant son. Isabella said, appearing at Marcus's side. Valdez extended his hand, and I shook it, suppressing my revulsion. "Your boy has exceeded all expectations," he said in accented English. "You should be very proud." "I am," I said simply. The next hours tested every ounce of my control. I mingled gathered final intelligence, watched the clock march toward 9 p.m. The transfer would happen during Marcus's speech, Isabella ensuring he entered the codes personally, while the whole room watched. At 8:45, Grace texted a single word: positions. I excused myself to the restroom, sending my own message, "Package ready for delivery." When I returned, Marcus was taking the stage, Isabella beside him. 200 conspirators and victims applauded, unaware that federal agents surrounded the building, that financial crimes investigators were poised to freeze every connected account, that the empire Roberto Valdez had built over decades would fall in minutes. "Thank you all for believing in Next Gen's vision," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. I moved to a strategic position where I could see both exits and the cartel's key players. Restrepo stood near the stage, ready to ensure the transfer went through. Valdez sat at the head table, surrounded by bodyguards who wouldn't save him from what was coming. The wolf had been silent long enough. Time to show these predators what happened when they threatened a father's son. Marcus continued his speech, building to the moment when he'd unknowingly sign his own death warrant. But I had other plans. The silent wolf was about to howl, and the sound would bring their whole world crashing down. Marcus stood at the podium, his enthusiasm infectious, as he detailed Next Gen's journey from startup to international player. I watched Isabella position herself strategically, ready to guide him through the transfer that would seal his fate. The laptop connected to the main screen showed Next Gen's financial interface, waiting for Marcus to input the codes that would move $50 million and simultaneously sign his death warrant. Before we initiate tonight's historic transfer, Marcus announced, "I want to thank the people who made this possible, our investors who believed in us from day one." Applause rippled through the room. Roberto Valdez raised his champagne glass in mock salute, probably imagining Marcus's upcoming perp walk the headlines that would destroy an innocent man while the real criminals vanished. My phone buzzed. "Grace. Technical team confirms all trackers active. As soon as transfer initiates, we'll have complete money trail. Teams ready on your signal." I'd spent the previous night enhancing my trap with details Grace didn't know about. Beyond just tracking the money, I'd programmed the system to automatically document every person who touched the transaction, creating an unbreakable chain of custody that would hold up in court. More importantly, I'd embedded a virus that would lock down all connected cartel accounts the moment they received funds, preventing them from moving the money or destroying evidence. And of course, Marcus continued, his voice full of warmth, "My father, Charleston Walsh, who taught me that integrity matters more than profit." Heads turned my way. I nodded acknowledgement while studying my prey. Valdez looked bored, checking his phone. Restrepo appeared anxious, eager to complete the transaction. Isabella maintained her supportive girlfriend act, one hand on Marcus's shoulder. 8:55 p.m., 5 minutes until showtime. I made my move, walking toward the stage with the measured pace of a man with nowhere urgent to be. "Mind if an old man says a few words?" I called out. Marcus looked surprised but pleased. "Everyone, my father wants to address you. Dad worked in forensic accounting for 35 years, so he knows a thing or two about financial success." The irony wasn't lost on me as I climbed the stage steps. Isabella's eyes narrowed slightly, but she couldn't object without breaking character. I shook Marcus's hand, then turned to face the crowd of predators and innocents. 35 years tracking financial crimes taught me patterns. I began conversationally. How money moves when people try to hide its origins. The layers they create, thinking complexity equals invisibility. A few uncomfortable shifts in the audience. Restrepo's smile faltered slightly. "But the thing about patterns," I continued, is once you recognize them, they're impossible to unsee. Like tonight, for instance. This $50 million transfer, it follows a very specific pattern. "Dad," Marcus whispered, confused. "What are you doing?" I patted his shoulder reassuringly while continuing. "The shell companies funding this expansion: Cayman Islands, Panama, Belize. Classic money laundering jurisdictions. The amounts always just below federal reporting thresholds. The timing coordinated with known drug trafficking routes." The room had gone dead silent. Valdez set down his champagne glass, his dead eyes now very much alive and focused on me. "Charleston?" Isabella said sweetly, though Steele underlined her tone. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Oh, I think this needs a public discussion," I replied. "Especially since everyone in this room has a right to know that Next Gen Payment Solutions has been unwittingly facilitating the largest money laundering operation in DEA history." Chaos erupted. Legitimate business partners gasped in shock. Cartel members reached for concealed weapons. Marcus stared at me in horror. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your girlfriend's real name being Isabella Valdez," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Daughter of Roberto Valdez, head of the Juarez cartel. I'm talking about Eduardo Restrepo being a cartel money man, not a legitimate investor. I'm talking about your best friend Jason Chen being murdered because he discovered the truth." Marcus stumbled backward, his face draining of color. "That's impossible. Jason died in an accident." Single-car accident on a clear night, experienced driver on a road he knew well. I pulled out my phone, displaying the evidence I'd gathered. "After he sent you 17 emails trying to warn you about irregularities in the books, emails that mysteriously disappeared from your servers." Isabella dropped all pretense, her face transforming into something ugly and dangerous. "You stupid old man. You have no idea what you've just done." "Oh, I know exactly what I've done," I said calmly. "I've spent 4 days documenting every transaction, every connection, every crime. Right now, FBI and DEA agents have surrounded this building. Every exit is covered. Your financial networks are frozen, all your accounts locked down." As if on cue, the main doors burst open. Federal agents flooded in weapons drawn, shouting commands. The cartel members who reached for guns found themselves staring down the barrels of assault rifles. "Nobody move FBI hands where we can see them!" But I wasn't done. As agents began securing the scene, I turned back to the microphone. "Marcus, I need you to listen carefully. You're going to input those transfer codes exactly as planned." "What?" He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Dad, no." "Trust me," I said firmly. "Input the codes. Complete the transfer." Isabella laughed harshly. "Yes, Marcus, complete it. Give us our money." But she didn't know what I knew. The moment Marcus entered those codes, my trap would spring. Every dollar would be tracked, every recipient identified, and most importantly, the virus would activate, locking the entire cartel's financial network. With shaking hands, Marcus typed. The screen showed the transfer initiating $50 million, beginning its journey through the digital maze the cartel had created. "Transfer complete," the system announced. Immediately, my phone lit up with notifications. The tracking system activated following the money as it split into dozens of streams racing through shell companies toward its final destinations. But as each packet arrived, the virus triggered, freezing the funds in place. "What's happening?" Valdez snarled, checking his own phone. "The accounts, they're locked." "That's the beautiful thing about digital systems," I explained. "They're only as secure as their weakest link. And you made Marcus your weakest link when you involved him in your crimes." Grace appeared beside me, her DEA badge prominent. "Roberto Valdez, you're under arrest for drug trafficking, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 40 other charges. Same goes for the rest of you." The arrests happened quickly, efficiently. Cartel members who'd thought themselves untouchable found themselves in handcuffs. Valdez maintained his composure until the agent mentioned Jason Chen's murder. Then his facade cracked. "You can't prove anything about that." "Actually, we can," Grace said. "Your enforcer, Miguel Torrens, kept souvenirs. Jason's watch, his wallet, and he was sloppy about disposing of the car he used to run Jason off the road. Still had paint transfer from Jason's vehicle. Isabella spat at me as agents cuffed her. "You destroyed everything. Marcus will never recover from this." "He'll recover," I said quietly. "He's stronger than you think. Stronger than you ever imagined, or you wouldn't have underestimated him." The revelation that broke Marcus completely came when investigators played Jason's recovered voicemails, the ones the cartel had deleted from his phone. "Marcus, it's Jason. Listen, something's wrong with our investor agreements. I've been digging and just call me back, okay? It's important." "Marcus, Jason again. I think we're in trouble, man. These shell companies, they're connected to some bad people. We need to talk face to face. Don't trust anyone else with this." "Brother, if you're getting this, I'm driving to your place now. If something happens to me, check my cloud backup. Password is your mom's birthday. The evidence is all there. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Be careful. These people are killers." Marcus collapsed into a chair, sobbing. The weight of it all, his girlfriend's betrayal, his friend's murder, his company's corruption crashed down at once. I knelt beside him, pulling him into my arms, like when he was young, and the world seemed too big and frightening. "I should have known," he kept repeating. "How did I not see it?" "Because you see the good in people," I told him. "That's not a weakness, son. It's what makes you who you are. They used that against you, but it's also what's going to help you rebuild." The celebration that was meant to mark NextGen's expansion had become the largest coordinated cartel takedown in DEA history. 43 arrests across 7 states, 200 million in assets frozen, and a drug distribution network dismantled. But the biggest victory was smaller, more personal. My son was alive and he knew the truth. The foundation of his life had crumbled, but he was standing on solid ground for the first time in 3 years. As crime scene technicians processed evidence and witnesses gave statements, Grace approached us. "Charleston, what you did tonight, that was incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous." "It was necessary," I replied simply. She turned to Marcus. "Your father's right about rebuilding. The legitimate parts of NextGen can be salvaged. You built something real alongside their lies. Don't let them take that from you too." Marcus looked at me with eyes that had aged years in minutes. "Dad, how do I come back from this? Everyone will know I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me." "No," I said firmly. "They'll know you were targeted by sophisticated criminals who spent millions creating an elaborate trap. They'll know that when the truth came out, you stood tall, and they'll know that NextGen, the real NextGen, was worth saving." Isabella's final words echoed as agents led her away. "This isn't over. My father has reach everywhere. You're all dead." But her threats rang hollow. The Valdez cartel's power had been built on fear and shadow. Exposed to light, it crumbled like ancient parchment. The wolf had howled, and the sheep's clothing had been torn away, revealing the predators beneath. As the country club emptied of law enforcement, and suspects Marcus and I stood alone on the stage where his dreams had died and been reborn in the space of an hour. "What now?" he asked quietly. "Now we rebuild," I said. "Honestly this time. No shortcuts, no mysterious investors, just hard work and integrity." "Well, will you help me?" "Try and stop me." The trap had been sprung, the predators caught, but the real work was just beginning. Marcus would need to testimony in trials, face public scrutiny, rebuild his company's reputation from scratch. But he wouldn't face it alone. The silent wolf had become a guardian, and I'd stand watch as long as my son needed me. Grace handed me a card as we prepared to leave. "The FBI could use someone with your skills as a consultant. Interested?" I pocketed the card thoughtfully. Retirement had never really suited me anyway. As we walked out into the Denver night police lights, still flashing media vans already arriving, I thought about Martha. She'd always said I'd know when Marcus truly needed me, that parental instinct would guide me when it mattered most. She was right as usual, and somewhere in whatever comes after, I hoped she knew that our son was safe. Bruised, betrayed, but not broken. ready to build something new on foundations of truth instead of lies. The media circus outside the Highlands Country Club resembled a feeding frenzy. News vans lined the street while reporters shouted questions at anyone emerging from the building. Marcus and I slipped out through a service entrance Grace had suggested avoiding the cameras that would have loved nothing more than to capture the broken CEO whose company had been a cartel front. "My apartment's probably swarming with agents," Marcus said numbly as we sat in my rental car. "Grace mentioned a safe house," I replied. "Somewhere you can rest while they process the scene." "Rest?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Dad, my entire life just exploded on live television. Isabella, God, I shared a bed with a murderer. How do I rest after that?" I didn't have easy answers, so I didn't offer any. Instead, I drove to the address Grace had provided, a nondescript house in a quiet suburb where Marcus could collapse without fear of cameras or residual cartel members seeking revenge. Inside, Marcus paced like a caged animal while I made coffee. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the arrests was wearing off, leaving raw wounds behind. 2 years, he muttered. 2 years of lies. Every kiss, every I love you, every plan we made together. All fake. "Not all of it," I said carefully. "What?" "Your work wasn't fake. The legitimate clients you helped, the jobs you created, the problems you solved. The cartel used your platform, but they didn't create it. You did." Marcus slumped onto the couch. "With blood money. Which has now been frozen and will be returned to proper authorities. But the code you wrote, the systems you designed, those came from your mind. No one can take that from you." My phone rang. "Grace. Charleston, we need Marcus at the federal building tomorrow morning. Debriefing witness protection discussion, the works. Also," she paused, "we found something in Isabella's apartment you both need to know about." "What kind of something?" "Documents suggesting Marcus wasn't their only target. They had files on you going back 2 years. Your career, your cases, even your wife's medical history. This wasn't random Charleston. They chose Marcus specifically because of you." The coffee mug slipped from my numb fingers, shattering on the tile floor. Marcus jumped at the sound. "Dad, what is it?" I put the phone on speaker. "Grace, explain." "Roberto Valdez's brother was Hector Valdez. Ring any bells?" The name hit me like a physical blow. Of course it rang bells. 15 years ago, I'd testified in the case that sent Hector Valdez to federal prison for life. He'd been running a massive welfare fraud scheme, stealing millions meant for struggling families. My forensic analysis had been the key evidence. "Hector died in prison 5 years ago," Grace continued. "Stabbed by another inmate. Roberto blamed you for his brother's death. This whole thing targeting Marcus, building an elaborate trap, it was revenge. They wanted you to watch your son go to prison for life, just like Roberto watched his brother die behind bars." The room spun. Every interaction suddenly took on new meaning. They hadn't randomly selected a brilliant tech entrepreneur to exploit. They'd hunted my son specifically to hurt me. "Dad?" Marcus's voice seemed distant. "You're saying Mom's death, my success, everything. It was all part of some sick revenge plot." "Your mother's death was natural," I said firmly, though my voice shook. "I was with her every moment. The cancer was real. But afterward, when you were vulnerable looking for investors..." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Marcus's first investor had approached him at a tech conference just months after Martha's funeral. When a young man is grieving his mother, desperate to prove himself to make her proud, posthumously, he's not thinking clearly about due diligence. "They profiled us," I whispered. "Studied us like subjects in an experiment, found our weak points and exploited them." Marcus stood abruptly, rage replacing despair. "So everything I built was just a weapon aimed at you? My entire career was just collateral damage in some cartel vendetta?" "No," Grace interjected over the phone. "That's what they wanted, but it's not what happened. Charleston, you need to see the rest of what we found. Can you come to the federal building tonight?" An hour later, we sat in a sterile conference room surrounded by evidence boxes. Grace spread files across the table, surveillance photos, financial records, psychological profiles the cartel had commissioned on our family. "Here's what's interesting," Grace said, pointing to a report dated 18 months ago. Isabella's handler notes express frustration. Marcus was supposed to be easier to manipulate. They expected him to cut corners to greedily accept dirty money without questions. Instead, he kept trying to verify investor credentials, insisted on transparency, wanted to meet their references. Another report, this one in Isabella's handwriting. Target maintains ethical standards despite multiple opportunities for corruption. Recommend increasing pressure through emotional manipulation. Note: subject's integrity appears genuine, not performative. Unusual for Americans in his tax bracket. Marcus read over my shoulder, his expression shifting. They were annoyed that I wasn't corrupt enough. Look at this. Grace showed us intercepted communications between Isabella and her father. She's complaining that you insisted on donating 10% of profits to coding education for underprivileged kids. That you kept hiring ex-convicts trying to rebuild their lives. Every decent thing you did made their job harder. I found myself smiling despite everything. Martha's son. They had to work around your integrity instead of exploiting greed, Grace continued. It took them 2 years and millions of dollars to build a system complex enough to fool someone who actually wanted to do legitimate business. A corrupt person would have been easy. You made it hard. But they still succeeded, Marcus said bitterly. Did they? I asked. Their goal was to destroy us both, to make me watch you rot in prison for crimes you didn't commit. Instead, they're all in custody. Their empire is crumbling and we're sitting here free men. That's not success. Grace's phone buzzed. She answered, her expression growing grim. How many understood? She hung up and faced us. Roberto Valdez just tried to make bail. The judge denied it, but his lawyer made an interesting argument. Claims you orchestrated this whole thing, Charleston. That you've been planning to take down the Valdez cartel for years and used your own son as bait. That's insane, Marcus protested. Is it? Grace asked. A jury might wonder why a retired forensic accountant happened to uncover a massive money laundering scheme in just 4 days. Why he had the skills to plant sophisticated financial tracking software. Why he manipulated events to create the perfect trap. I saw where this was heading. They're going to claim I knew all along, that I let Marcus suffer for 2 years to build my case. The defense attorney is good, Grace admitted. She's already filing motions suggesting entrapment, claiming you were a government asset who sacrificed his son's safety for a conviction. Marcus looked at me with something I couldn't read. Were you? No, I said firmly. I had no idea until Grace grabbed my wrist in that bar. Everything I did was to save you. But you did manipulate events, Grace said carefully. The virus, the tracking software, the timing of the revelation. A good prosecutor could argue you crossed lines. I did what was necessary. Like you did with Hector Valdez. Grace pulled out another file. I reviewed that case. You didn't just analyze his finances. You anticipated his moves, set traps in the data, made it impossible for him to escape justice. The U.S. attorney called your work brilliantly ruthless. The room fell silent. Marcus studied me like he was seeing me for the first time. I've always been willing to be ruthless when protecting innocent people, I said finally. Whether from welfare fraud or drug cartels, if that makes me the villain in Roberto Valdez's story, I can live with that. The problem, Grace said, is if Valdez's lawyer creates enough doubt, some of these charges might not stick. We need everything airtight, which means we need both of you to testify, extensively, publicly. Marcus laughed humorlessly. Publicly admit I was too stupid to see my girlfriend was a cartel princess, that my business was a front, that my best friend died trying to warn me. Sure, why not completely destroy what's left of my reputation? Or, I said slowly, an idea forming, we flip the narrative. Grace raised an eyebrow, meaning, Roberto wants to paint me as the manipulator. Fine, let him. Because that makes Marcus the victim not of his own naivety, but of two master manipulators, Roberto and me. The public loves a story of someone caught between titans. You'd let yourself be portrayed as someone who used his own son, Grace asked. If it helps Marcus rebuild, yes. I'm retired. My reputation in forensic accounting is established, but Marcus has 40 years of career ahead of him. Let Roberto's lawyers paint me as the ruthless puppet master. It only emphasizes that Marcus was an innocent caught in someone else's war. Marcus shook his head. Dad, no. I won't let you fall on that sword for me. It's not falling on a sword if it's partially true. I admitted. I was ruthless. I did manipulate events once I knew the truth. I used skills honed over decades to destroy them. The only lie would be claiming I knew from the beginning. Grace considered this. It could work. Charleston Walsh, legendary forensic investigator, comes out of retirement for one last case, personal this time. Goes toe-to-toe with a cartel leader in a shadow war where his son is the battlefield. Media would eat it up. And Marcus emerges as the brilliant entrepreneur who built something so valuable that titans fought over it, I added. His company becomes proof that legitimate business is worth protecting from corruption. I don't like it, Marcus said. It feels like another lie. The truth is complex, I replied. Roberto targeted you to hurt me. I fought back to save you. Both things are true. We just choose which truth to emphasize. Over the next 3 hours, we crafted the narrative that would carry us through trials and media scrutiny. Marcus would testify to his genuine business efforts, his ignorance of the cartel connections, his devastation at learning of Jason's murder. I would acknowledge my ruthless pursuit of the cartel once I discovered their scheme, playing up the father-protecting son angle that juries love. There's one more thing, Grace said as we prepared to leave. Isabella wants to make a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced sentence. She claims she can provide information about other cartel operations, but she'll only talk to Marcus. Absolutely not, I said immediately. Dad, Marcus said quietly. I need to face her. I need to understand how someone could fake loving another person so completely. It's a manipulation tactic, I warned. Maybe. Or maybe she's just a woman who got trapped in her father's world. I need to know which. For my own sanity, I need to know if anything was real. Grace arranged the meeting for the following day. As we drove back to the safe house, Marcus stared out at the Denver skyline lights twinkling like stars brought to earth. Do you think I'm weak? He asked suddenly, for wanting to believe some part of it was real. I think you're human, I said. And I think your capacity to still hope for good in people even after this is what will let you rebuild. It's not weakness, son. It's strength of a different kind. He was quiet for a long moment. Tell me about Hector Valdez, the man whose death started all this. So I told him. About finding discrepancies in welfare distribution, about following paper trails that led to children going hungry, while Hector bought yachts. About testifying for 3 days straight, methodically destroying every lie Hector's lawyers presented. About feeling no remorse when the judge handed down a life sentence. He had 3 kids on welfare himself once, I concluded. Knew what it meant to need that help, and he chose to steal it anyway. Some people are just broken, Marcus. Recognizing that doesn't mean losing faith in humanity. It means protecting the good ones from the broken ones. Is Isabella broken? We'll find out tomorrow. That night, unable to sleep, I stood on the safe house's back porch, thinking about unintended consequences. My work putting Hector away had created a vendetta that nearly destroyed my son. But it had also saved thousands of families from poverty. Marcus building a legitimate business had attracted cartel attention, but it had also employed hundreds and would continue to do so after we cleaned it up. Every action creates ripples. The trick is making sure the good ripples outnumber the bad. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you won, old man. But Roberto has friends everywhere. This isn't over. I deleted the message without concern. Let them come. The silent wolf had remembered how to hunt, and I had more than myself to protect now. I had a legacy to preserve and a son to guard. The war with Roberto Valdez had begun with him thinking he held all the cards. Tomorrow, when Isabella faced Marcus across an interrogation table, another round would play out. But I already knew how it would end. Because predators always underestimate two things: a father's love and a good man's resilience. Roberto had awakened both, and that would be his downfall. The federal building's interrogation room smelled of industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. Marcus sat across from Isabella, bulletproof glass between them, while I watched from an observation room with Grace and federal prosecutor Diana Chen. 2 U.S. Marshals flanked Isabella, whose designer clothes had been replaced with orange jail garb. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Isabella began, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Without makeup and styling, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "I needed to see you," Marcus replied steadily, "to understand." Isabella's eyes filled with tears that might have been genuine. "What do you want to know?" "Everything, starting with whether you ever felt anything real." A long pause. Isabella studied her shackled hands before responding. "The first time I laughed at one of your coding jokes that was real. The night you held me after my supposed grandmother died, your comfort was real even if her death was fake. When you talked about building a company that would help immigrant families send money home safely." She swallowed hard. "That hit closer than you know." "My father says you're broken," Marcus said bluntly. "Are you—" Isabella flinched. "Broken? I was raised by a man who executed my mother's killer in front of me when I was 7. Taught that love was weakness and family was everything. Trained to seduce and manipulate before I understood what those words meant. So yes, Mr. Walsh, I'm broken. But broken things can still feel." In the observation room, Diana Chen made notes. "She's good, playing the victim card perfectly." But I watched Marcus's face and saw something the prosecutor missed. My son's gift had always been seeing past surfaces to the person beneath. It made him vulnerable to exploitation, but it also made him perceptive in ways that surprised people. "Tell me about Jason," Marcus said quietly. Isabella's composure cracked. "I tried to warn him off, anonymously, sent him messages to stop digging, but your friend was stubborn brilliant. When my father ordered his death, I begged for alternatives. Prison threats, anything else. But you didn't stop it." "No," she admitted. "I chose my family over your friend, just like I chose them over you every day for 2 years. That's who I am, Marcus. Someone who makes the wrong choice and has to live with it." "The FBI says you're offering full cooperation," Marcus continued. "Why?" "Because I'm 28 years old and tired of being owned," Isabella said fiercely. "Because watching you build something honest made me hate everything dishonest about my life. Because when your father exposed us at that party, part of me was relieved it was finally over." "Self-serving narrative," Diana muttered in the observation room. But Grace disagreed. "Look at her body language, the micro-expressions. She's telling the truth, or at least her version of it." Marcus leaned forward. "If you testify, really testify, they'll kill you. Your father, your family, they don't forgive betrayal." "I know," Isabella said simply. "Maybe that's my penance, a short, truthful life instead of a long, lying one." The interview continued for 2 more hours. Isabella provided names, dates, murder conspiracies beyond Jason financial networks spanning continents. She revealed that NextGen was one of 17 similar companies the cartel had infiltrated, that Roberto's revenge against me was just a side benefit of a massive money laundering expansion. When Marcus finally stood to leave, Isabella called out desperately. "I know it doesn't matter, but the morning you made me breakfast in bed for my fake birthday, that was the first time I considered telling you everything. Walking away from all of it. I almost did." "Why didn't you—" "Because I'm broken," she repeated. "And broken people make broken choices, But you're not broken, Marcus. Don't let what we did break you. Promise me. Marcus left without promising anything. In the observation room, Diana Chen looked satisfied. With her testimony, we can dismantle the entire network. This is huge. I found Marcus in the Federal Building's cafeteria, staring at untouched coffee. You okay? I asked, sitting beside him. She loved me, he said wonderingly. In whatever twisted way she's capable of, she actually loved me, and she still chose them. What does that say about me that I inspired love that wasn't enough to overcome family loyalty? It says you're remarkable enough to crack through a lifetime of conditioning even if you couldn't shatter it completely. That's not failure, son. That's proof of who you are. The trials began 2 weeks later. Media coverage was intense, dubbing it the Silicon Valley cartel case. Marcus testified for 3 days, calmly detailing how he'd built NextGen, his shock at discovering the truth, his determination to salvage the legitimate parts of his company. When Roberto Valdez's defense attorney tried to paint me as a manipulative puppet master who'd used his son as bait, I leaned into it. I've spent 35 years hunting financial criminals, I testified. So yes, when I discovered the cartel was using my son, I employed every skill I'd learned. I was ruthless, calculated, and absolutely willing to burn down their entire empire to save him. Any father worth the title would do the same. The jury loved it. The narrative of a father's revenge played better than any defense theory about entrapment. Roberto Valdez received life without parole. Restrepo got 40 years. 37 other conspirators received sentences ranging from 5 years to life. Isabella's testimony proved crucial, and as she'd predicted, there were 3 attempts on her life in federal custody. She survived them all and entered witness protection, disappearing into a new identity somewhere in America. Before she left, she sent Marcus a letter. I taught you that love could be a lie. Please let someone teach you it can be truth. Be happy. Be free. Be everything I couldn't. The cleanup of NextGen took 6 months. We hired independent auditors, separated legitimate revenue from cartel money, rebuilt from the ground up. 90% of employees stayed believing in Marcus's vision of ethical financial technology. The 10% who left were mostly plants we were glad to lose. I officially came out of retirement, accepting the FBI's offer to consult on financial crimes. My reputation as the man who'd brought down the Valdez cartel opened doors, and I found purpose in training the next generation of forensic accountants. Marcus threw himself into rebuilding, but differently this time. He instituted radical transparency, published all investor information, publicly created an ethics board with veto power over any partnerships. NextGen's second incarnation grew slower but stronger, built on foundations of trust rather than naive faith. A year later, at the relaunch party for NextGen 2.0, the contrast to that night at the Highlands Country Club was stark. Instead of champagne and hidden agendas, we served beer and radical honesty. Marcus's speech acknowledged the company's dark period, thanked those who'd stood by them, and outlined a future built on transparency. My father taught me that integrity matters more than profit. Marcus said, echoing words from a year ago, but with deeper understanding. I forgot that lesson for a while, distracted by rapid growth and false friends. But sometimes you need to lose your way to truly find your path. After the party, we stood on the office balcony, looking out at Denver's lights. The same view, but everything had changed. Any regrets? Marcus asked. None that matter, I replied. I regret Jason died thinking I was too stubborn to listen. I regret those 2 years of living a lie. But mostly I'm grateful. For what? For a father who climbed out of a bathroom window to save me. For employees who believed in redemption. For the chance to build something real this time. He paused. For learning that being broken doesn't mean being irredeemable. Isabella. I hope she finds peace wherever she is. We were both victims of Roberto's revenge plot. She just had a 2-decade head start on the damage. Grace joined us on the balcony, now a friend, rather than handler. The Attorney General sends her thanks again. The Valdez takedown led to 17 more cartel arrests. You two started an avalanche. Charleston started it, Marcus corrected. I just survived it. You did more than survive, I said firmly. You rebuilt, stronger, wiser, better. 6 months later, Marcus met Amy Chen at a cybersecurity conference. No relation to Jason, despite the surname, just a brilliant programmer with a passion for ethical technology. Their courtship was slow, careful, built on verified truth rather than comfortable lies. When they married 2 years later, I gave a toast about trust earned rather than blindly given. Isabella was right about one thing: love could be truth. It just took wisdom to recognize the genuine article. NextGen thrived in its new incarnation, smaller but more profitable serving communities traditional banking ignored. Marcus instituted the Jason Chen Memorial Scholarship Funding Technology Education for disadvantaged youth. Every year, on the anniversary of Jason's death, we visited his grave together, updating him on the company he'd died trying to save. Roberto Valdez died in prison 3 years into his sentence, stabbed by an inmate whose family had been destroyed by cartel drugs. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only a sense of cosmic justice. He'd wanted me to feel the pain of watching my son destroyed by the system. Instead, he'd watched his empire crumble while my son rose from its ashes. The safe house where we'd hidden that first night became a strange pilgrimage site for us. Marcus bought it when it went on the market, turning it into transitional housing for people rebuilding after incarceration. Full circle from destruction to redemption. On my 70th birthday, Marcus threw a surprise party at the office. Former colleagues from my forensic accounting days mixed with FBI agents I'd trained, legitimate business partners Marcus had cultivated, and employees whose lives had been changed by second chances. To Charleston Walsh. Marcus toasted, who taught me that wolves can be protectors as well as predators, who showed me that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone remain naive, who proved that integrity isn't about never falling, but about how you rise. Later, as the party wound down, Amy pulled me aside. Marcus and I have news. You're going to be a grandfather. We're naming him William after Jason's middle name, if that's okay. I hugged my daughter-in-law, thinking about cycles and redemption. Somewhere Martha was smiling. Our son had not only survived, but thrived. The family legacy would continue, built on truth rather than lies, strength rather than naivety. Roberto Valdez had set out to destroy us through an elaborate revenge plot spanning years. Instead, he'd forged us in fire, burning away weakness and leaving something unbreakable. The silent wolf had become a guardian, and the sheep's clothing had been transformed into armor. As I write this account, Marcus's company processes over $1 billion annually, all transparent, all ethical. The FBI regularly consults me on cartel financial operations. Grace leads a task force dismantling money laundering networks. Isabella, wherever she is, lives free of her father's shadow. And somewhere Jason Chen rests knowing his death meant something, that his warning finally got through, just taking a longer path than anyone expected. The greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's redemption. It's taking what was meant to break you and building something beautiful from the pieces. Roberto Valdez wanted to destroy the Walsh family. Instead, he made us unbreakable. That's the thing about hunting wolves. Sometimes you awaken something more dangerous than what you sought to destroy. Sometimes you teach the prey to become predators themselves. And sometimes in trying to create victims, you forge heroes. My name is Charleston Walsh. I was a forensic accountant who thought retirement meant peace. Instead, I discovered that peace must be earned, protected, fought for. My son taught me that trust isn't weakness when tempered with wisdom. A cartel taught me that love for family can be both weapon and shield. And a bartender's desperate grip on my wrist taught me that sometimes the most important fights are the ones we don't see coming until we're already in the middle of them. The silent wolf hunts still, but now with purpose beyond revenge. Now it hunts so that others might live free of predators. That's the real victory, not the destruction of enemies, but the protection of innocence. Roberto Valdez lost everything in his quest for revenge. We gained everything in our fight for survival. That's justice. That's redemption. That's the final accounting in a ledger written in choices rather than dollars. The books, as they say in my profession, are finally balanced. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to redemption. If you've ever faced a situation where someone you trusted turned out to be deceiving you, or if you've had to fight to protect your family from hidden dangers, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. How did you find the strength to overcome it? What lessons did you learn about trust family and the power of truth? If this story resonated with you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more accounts of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Share this with someone who might need a reminder that even in our darkest moments, when those we love are threatened by forces beyond our control, we have more strength than we realize. Remember, the greatest revenge against those who try to break us isn't violence or hatred. It's building something better from the ruins they created. It's choosing redemption over revenge, truth over comfortable lies, and love over fear. Stay strong, stay wise, and never underestimate the power of a parent's love or the resilience of the human spirit. Until next time, this is Charleston Walsh reminding you that sometimes the silent wolf protects the flock better than the loudest shepherd. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to face whatever truths life reveals, knowing that redemption is always possible for those brave enough to seek it.